right. Thank you, Steve. Again, hello, everybody. This podcast is brought to you by two companies here, one from Steve's and one from us, Grad Achiever team. And Grad Achiever is a platform, it's a website three women in tech have founded, mainly to bring all the information together for all the parents, because right now anything related to high school is scattered all over the place, different Facebook groups, WhatsApp groups. So our intent is to open up this free platform where everybody can share the information to make the journey much more pleasant and helpful for parents as well as students. With that said, today we have Steve. We did have a podcast from him, I think a month ago, last year, towards the end of the year, and it was a great success where he walked parents and students through what it takes to really make an impactful application for IVs. But he has come back to dedicate 3 working sessions for us here to clearly go through the path of entire application process itself. So we appreciate that you have taken this time to help your students, or maybe some students are here as well. And we promise that this is going to be a super, super informative session for you all. With that said, I'll hand it back to Steve.
Wonderful. I could not agree more. I love your mission. I love what you're doing at Grad Achiever. Love how you're doing it. And so I'm really grateful to be able to contribute. And I want to emphasize again, we have, it looks like 8 more people now than we did 2 minutes ago when I said this the first time. This is a very interactive experience. So if you have questions along the way, I hope you ask your questions. And then I will do my best to either fit them into the actual presentation, the actual content. We do have 2 more days, tomorrow and the next day, where we can even build and go deeper. But also, I'm happy to spend a few minutes at the end making sure that we cover some of those questions as well. All right. So with that said, let's go ahead and dive into our first day, this kind of hacking college admissions workshop, and understand what colleges actually look for. Because once you can clarify this major misconception, once families understand the perspective of the colleges, then we can avoid a lot of the hassle, a lot of the anxiety, a lot of the stress of college prep, especially for this audience that is, primarily or has a large portion of people who got their degrees in a different country, in a very different system, and now their children are getting ready to get degrees in the US system. And that can be overwhelming, even if you got your degree here 20 years ago, because the changes are so stark, they're so dramatic. But if you grew up in a different system and now you're trying to navigate this one, it's really important to understand what we talk about today. This content that we're discussing is the foundation for the greatest mistakes, the greatest college prep mistakes that we see, and it allows you exactly what you need to know and do so that you can avoid those mistakes. All right. So first of all, I want to ask you, and I want you to type into the chat your answer. If you were asked, just based on what you know, what do you think admissions officers are looking for when they read through thousands of applications and they try to decide whom to admit and whom to reject and who to, defer? How do they make that decision? And so type into the chat in Facebook Live or in Zoom here, what are admissions officers looking for? Okay, awesome. We've got great answers so far. I'm just going to start moving through these. We have some a good variety, even, it looks like, from a good personal story, which is really helpful actually, and we'll talk about why today and a lot tomorrow. Good SAT scores, grades, GPA, grades and portfolio, well-rounded. No clue, it's a myth. I love it. I love it. Commitment to extracurriculars, a well-rounded student, uniqueness, good fit for their college. Okay. Grades, is a student a good addition to their college? Excellent. Want someone who will be successful alumni in the future? Someone, looks like we've got someone who listens to my podcast. That's great. A combination of grades, extracurriculars, admissions officers looking for specialty in students. Nice. Okay, passion, leadership, successful in college. uniqueness. It's just time to be someone else. I love this. Okay, we've got some pretty well-educated parents. When I did this survey, in unofficial terms, okay, it was not statistically significant. I didn't randomize a number of issues with my survey. But when I did the survey and asked a few hundred people, I got 3 themes. Number one, that admissions officers are looking for the hardest working applicants. They're trying to figure out, which of these people worked the hardest and therefore deserves the, admission the most. Number 2, we're looking for the smartest. Okay, it's an academic institution. Of course, they care about who's going to perform well academically in this academic institution. And then number 3 was the most impressive, which was interesting to come up with these 3. Most impressive kind of feels like a combination of the first 2, right? If you're both hardworking and you're really, really smart, then you can do impressive things. And that becomes then the metric that families are trying to gauge their college prep success by. Is my son or daughter as impressive as this other child who got into the school that I want to go to? All right, that becomes one of the ways that families try to kind of keep track of where they are. And we see this misconception in Facebook groups. I haven't really seen how the Grad Achiever platform works with interacting with each other. I haven't, besides direct messages, I haven't seen like a community chat function. There might be one, but Facebook already meets that need for most of us. And this is a direct quote from a Facebook post. If the valedictorian who earned a 1580 SAT was rejected from all 19 schools where she applied, what hope do the rest of us have? Now, this was a comment about a specific person, a real person. I think they probably were exaggerating. I doubt that this person was rejected from 19 schools, although I suppose it is possible. But still, everyone on this platform, everyone here listening to me today can appreciate what we're talking about here, right? Can appreciate how challenging this is when you believe that colleges are looking for the most impressive person, and then you find someone who is objectively impressive. A 1580 SAT and valedictorian, that's objectively impressive. That's a lot of work. That is the best performer in the entire class and missing one question on the SAT, right? Nearly a perfect score. And so what some families think when they hear this is, oh, well, it appears that we must be in a more competitive school, or it appears that 1580 is not high enough. We need to get to 1600, or else we're not going to be able to make it, right? And so that's the response that most families have to information like this, because this sort of thing happens. And my phone was flooded with messages of families who were disappointed in their early decision results. And I'm excited to tell you that those families that reached out to me were not the families that follow the strategy that we're talking about today. Among the families that I work with regularly that follow what we're doing and what I'm going to teach you over these next 3 days, we had incredible results again in our early decision rounds. We had students get into Yale and Cornell and Vanderbilt and just outstanding schools. We had so many students get into their top choice, and that means that they don't have to fill out any more applications. Once they were into their early decision school, they didn't need to do any more supplemental essays. They were done. They could focus on scholarships at that point. And that saves a lot of heartache and a lot of stress. And so that's good news, okay? Because we've gotten really excellent results year after year after year. And then this year, it appears that we got the same outstanding results again, which shows us that this strategy is still very, very successful, all right? So you can see where the stress and anxiety is coming from in this parent And all of the comments that came after that, I mean, I don't need to duplicate that for you, because I imagine most of you are on Facebook and you're in some of these groups and you've seen these conversations and you know how worked up parents get in these community groups. And so this entire conversation was stemmed from the idea that if admissions officers are looking for the most impressive, then how does someone get more impressive than valedictorian with 1580? That this isn't fair, like something's not right. What's actually happening is this person submitted a very boring application. And we'll talk about why and what that means now. Okay, let's get started to talk about that. So if admissions officers are not just looking for the most impressive, then what are they looking for? And we don't have to look that hard. I spent a few minutes on Google just finding actual quotes from actual admissions officers or deans of admissions. And this was a very quick summary of some of those quotes that we found, right? We do want to be smart at top schools. That's a great thing, okay? This top sentence here. But we need to see that they're going to be good classmates and community builders. This one, devote your time and energy to your talents and hobbies. Differentiate yourself so they can remember you. We'll see that tomorrow. Really important part of tomorrow. It's who you are as a person. Give insights into your character, your values. I remember hearing the dean of admissions at Stanford talking about the number one thing that he was looking for at that time. This was the most recent dean, not the one that's there now. But at that time, he talked about, man, the most important thing I try to do is figure out what I want to be this person's roommate. This person's going to be someone else's roommate for 4 years. Is that going to work out okay? Is that going to be a good thing? And so we have a lot of evidence that they're thinking about things that go way beyond what is their test score, what is their GPA, how impressive are they? And to put this in perspective, perhaps better than anyone else did, Drew Faust was the president of Harvard, not just the dean of admissions, was the president of Harvard up until 2018. And she was outspoken about this because this is a really important idea. But she said, look, we could fill every single class twice over with just valedictorians who apply. And if you put yourself in this admissions officer's shoes, right? You put yourself in their shoes, how do you decide who is more impressive? This valedictorian or that valedictorian? How do you decide which one is smarter? How do you decide which one is harder working? I mean, it's a fool's errand, right? And if you really think about it from that perspective, from the schools that are highly selective and they have lots of choices, they have more valedictorians applying than they have spots available. And then when you look at the actual demographics of who gets admitted, a whole bunch of people were admitted over the valedictorians, where valedictorians were rejected and students with lower GPAs were admitted. So we know, without any doubt, we know that what is happening is not admissions officers reading all the applications and trying to figure out who's most impressive. Let's admit the top 3% most impressive applicants and then reject the rest. That is not at all what's happening. So what is happening? What are they looking for? What we talked about in Grad Achiever earlier was this idea that colleges are different. They've all got their own institutional priorities, but as a general rule, this is accurate. Number one, they want a happy, healthy, intellectually curious, and capable class of students. What does that mean? Well, they need to shape the class, which we'll talk about in just a second. Shape a class so that there's all the variety and diversity that is necessary for that, so that students can benefit from each other's differences. But colleges also need to fill all their institutional needs and priorities. So every college, or most colleges, have athletic teams. They need every single spot on every single team filled. And most of them have orchestras, most of them have laboratories. And the example that I often give, if this college just spent $40 million building a new lab, or $140 million building a new building, you better believe that they're looking for, if it's a new biology laboratory, they're looking for new biologists to come help the professors do the work that they want to do in that new multi-million-dollar laboratory. All right, so different schools have different institutional priorities and needs. One school this year might have had 6 different violinists graduate. And so next year, they're really looking at people who are good enough in the violin that they can add to the orchestra. But another school might have 0 violinists graduate. And you and I, we just don't know. We don't know if our instrument is filling that spot. If you're on a sports team, you might know because you might meet the coach and get to know that information. But there are institutional needs, and oftentimes we have no idea what those institutional needs will be. And then someone mentioned this. This is outstanding because most people have no idea and don't even think in terms of alumni. But colleges definitely think in terms of alumni. Colleges want to find students who are highly likely to go out after they graduate and make the world a better place. Go out and write a New York Times bestselling book. Go out and start a company that makes the world better. Go out and become a world leader of some kind, okay? They're trying to think when they read your application, is this the kind of person who's going to make an incredible alumnus or alumna? And if they are, that's wonderful because especially these most selective colleges care a lot about figuring out who's going to go out and make the world a better place, because when they do that, the colleges themselves say, look at our incredible alumni. Look at the alumni network that you have when you come to a great school like ours. Okay, so they're very, very cognizant of that. I can tell you that having earned a degree at Harvard, I can tell you that it's almost impossible. I would be in shock if I ever learned of someone who made it through a degree at Harvard without learning that 8 US presidents went through Harvard. And I used the same example last time in Grad Achiever. Why? Why does every student who gets a degree at this school learn this little factoid? I mean, what a random thing, right? But we hear about that because Harvard cares about the fact that 8 US presidents have gone through Harvard. And you better believe they're looking for the 9th, okay? I knew, and everyone knew, that Harvard was first with 8, that Yale was second with 3, and that's just information that everyone is aware of. And everyone is aware because we're told about it. We're also told about the Rhodes Scholars and the number of US senators and all kinds of Harvard does a good job kind of emphasizing the value that their alumni have in the open market. Okay, so they care a lot about this. Now, what happens when you lose perspective of what the admissions officers are actually thinking about? How do we shape this unique class in a way that's going to benefit everyone? How do we fill all of our institutional needs? And how do we ensure, or how do we increase the chances that the people we admit now are going to move on and do amazing things out in the world? If instead you believe that they're just trying to figure out, okay, let me read these 10 applications and rank them from most impressive to least impressive. Now that I've done that, let me do these 1,000 applications from most impressive to least impressive. Now 40,000 from most impressive to least impressive, and I'll take the highest ranking, most impressive applicants. If you believe that myth, then that has far-reaching consequences. You are going to do exactly what everyone else is going to do. If you believe that admissions officers are trying to figure out who is the most impressive of these candidates, you're going to begin high school, and you're probably going to begin before high school, asking the question, well, what's more impressive to an admissions officer? What is most impressive to an admissions officer? And you're going to ask that question, and you're going to come up with the same answers as a lot of other people who are also asking the same question. Because anywhere in the United States, anywhere in the world where people are talking about US admissions, you're going to hear very similar advice. What's most impressive to an admissions officer? Well, first of all, get top grades in the most rigorous curriculum available in your school. Number 2, get top SAT or ACT scores And that means take and retake those tests and get the tutoring, do whatever you need to get those scores. Then, if you really want to be impressive, grades and scores are not enough. You need to demonstrate leadership in as many ways as possible. So, especially if you can be well-rounded and a leader, that's the best. You'll hear this all the time. You'll hear if you can be the captain of the sports team, be in music and join several clubs, and then be really competitive in debate, be a champion in debate or whatever, then that's how you demonstrate leadership. Get into student government, do everything. But because there are other people who are demonstrating leadership in schools, you need to also develop some kind of spike, some kind of wow factor, some kind of X factor, right? And that's the advice that you're going to hear. That's the strategy that you're going to follow if you spend all 4 years of high school, and oftentimes you begin before high school, asking the question, what's the most impressive to the admissions officers? And here's the funny thing, okay? Even if you're successful, I'm just going to throw this out there before we even get to the reasons why this strategy can be so poor. But even if you're successful, I just want you to think about this for a second. Let's say you sacrifice your sleep, you sacrifice your curiosity, you don't do the things that you are interested in doing, and instead you go do the most impressive things possible. You become the captain of the sports team, you become valedictorian of your school, and you're the student body president. You do everything that you need to become the most impressive student in your entire school. You may not realize until senior year, when you actually apply, that there are actually 30,000 high schools in North America. And each one of them has a valedictorian. And every single one of them has captains of all the teams and a student body president. And so you become the objectively most impressive student in your school. Everyone in your school tells you, man, you're going to get into Harvard. You're going to get into everywhere you apply. You're the best student we have. Everyone's going to feel that way. Everyone's going to say that. And when you apply, you might discover that there are 30,000 other schools, each with their own most impressive student. And if you're that valedictorian, this one that we learned about here, right, who earned a 1580 SAT, but was rejected from every single school, I can tell you with a lot of a high degree of certainty that almost certainly this valedictorian submitted a boring application. She spent her 4 years of high school asking the question, what's more impressive to an admissions officer, this class or that class? What's more impressive, this activity or that activity? And she fell into the impressiveness trap, all right? So the impressiveness trap is you work harder than everyone else in order to submit a boring application, okay? And that's why this process, this strategy is broken. Asking the question, what's most impressive to an admissions officer for the entire time you're in high school, and trying to do that leads to an application that looks like everyone else. And here's the price you pay in order to submit that boring application, the one that looks like 30,000 other people. The reality is your teenager is in the middle of the strongest brain development that they will ever have again. Their brain developed faster as a newborn until 3, and their brain developed faster at around 5 or 6 until 8, and then it develops as a teenager up until about 26 to 28 years old. This is the last stage of rapid development in the brain. There's long-term effects that we're not clear on. We don't know exactly what happens with chronic sleep deprivation during this critical period where your brain is developing. But we do know that the last thing to develop is the prefrontal cortex, which happens to be the most important region of the brain to become the kind of person that's really competitive for schools like Princeton and Yale and UPenn and Stanford and whatever else, okay? The part of the brain that you really want to develop is the last one to develop. We also know that it's not just long-term development that we need to be concerned about. We know from the outstanding research that is being done at the Sleep Science Center out of Stanford and UCLA, we know about the short-term effects of sleep deprivation. Because what happens when you are an ambitious family, an ambitious teenager, and you say, what's more impressive to an admissions officer? You begin to do more and more things that you think are impressive to an admissions officer. And at some point, you have to figure out, how do I fit it all in? I've got a very busy schedule. How do I fit this all in? And when you try to fit it all in, generally the answer becomes, well, I'll stay up a little bit later to fit this in. I'll wake up a little bit earlier to fit this in. I'm not going to give up my other activities. I need to be as busy and hardworking as possible so I can be more impressive. So what am I going to do? Well, I'll give up a little bit of my sleep so that I can do this. And eventually you're giving up a lot of sleep, not a little bit, a lot of sleep, and you're sleep deprived. And we know from the Sleep Science Center, we know that from the research that's being done there, that the cognitive effect on a teenager of sleep deprivation is the same as the effect of intoxication on a teenager. So your learning centers are muted. Your ability to take in new information is destroyed. Your brain becomes fuzzy, and learning is not sharp. It's not clear. It's not easy. You end up reading your material, and after 20 minutes of reading, 25 minutes of reading, you say, wow, I have no idea what I just read. Where did I even start daydreaming? And you go back and try to find where you were. You're in class, but you can't really process what you're learning in real time, so you're going to have to restudy it again after class. You're losing a lot of time and efficiency when you're sleep deprived, because your brain is functioning as if you're intoxicated. And just like, intoxication can have a large continuum, right? You can be a little bit tipsy and just kind of flighty and not thinking straight, but you can get all the way to so intoxicated that you can't even walk straight. And sleep deprivation is the same. You can get so sleep deprived that you can't even walk straight. You can't even think straight. And then it goes even further. I'm going to stop here, but there's a lot more science that we get into in my course with the teens. But the dangers and the damage that's being done by sleep deprivation is even more intense, because when does information transition from new learning to long-term memory? It happens in the last stage of deep sleep, when your brain takes the newly learned material, cuts it up into sections, and we don't know why, but it flips it around so you're learning it backwards at 28 times the speed that you learned it the first time. And at 28 times the speed, your brain starts to reprocess that information. Well, it decides where to store this newly learned information in long-term memory. So we have some teens waking up really early, cutting off that last stage of deep sleep, and cutting out the transfer of new learned information into long-term memory storage. Okay, really, really costly stuff, right? The brain that is 2% of your body mass consumes about 20 to 25% of your calories every day, and there's no blood flow to the brain the same way that blood flows throughout the rest of the body. There's cerebral spinal fluid because of the blood-brain barrier, and the oligodendrites do not shift orientation and allow cerebral spinal fluid in to clean out the waste of 20% of your calories being consumed in 2% of your body mass. That waste builds up all day long, and the only time the oligodendrites shift orientation and allow cerebral spinal fluid in to clean out the waste products, that only happens in deep sleep. And so we have teenagers who push themselves so hard that they don't even get yesterday's waste out of the brain. And they try to start the day with this fuzzy thinking, unclear fuzzy thinking. It's just, wow, what a price to pay. What a price to pay. Long-term, short-term, and everything in between. It's a bad idea to sacrifice your sleep to try to be more impressive. And it's not just your sleep. I'll go ahead and move a little bit faster on these. Oops, okay, we're here. Because I've spent some time already on the sleep, but we're sacrificing in many ways. Teens say, look, I would, if I weren't preparing for college, I would go pursue these things. I'm curious about this, or I'm interested in that. Or my friend's doing this and I would join them and do that because that sounds interesting to me. I would play, I would be creative, I would go out and interact with people in positive ways more often. but I have to be impressive. My favorite class, top two at least. One of my top two favorite classes at Harvard was my design thinking class. And one of the coolest things that we learned is just how critical play is to creativity, and how teenagers, this wasn't from class, but I went on to explore deeper the fact that teenagers have this natural advantage in brain development. If you want to pursue, if you want your brain to become better at solving problems and building empathy and understanding different perspectives, perspective taking, which is key to making connections between interdisciplinary ideas and solving problems across industries, right? These skills that are so valuable and so valued by admissions officers, they're developed through play, and they're developed through pursuing your curiosity. And so if you lose curiosity, if you're so overscheduled that you have no space to breathe, let alone space to be curious, and you start to lose that spark of curiosity, you are paying a huge price. That's a really big price. Okay, this should be number two. We've talked about sleep as the first price. Number two, sacrificing. And then here's the kicker. What we don't realize what we're doing as we talk to our teens, and we encourage them to go do what someone else did that was impressive enough to get in, right? Go look at your uncle's cousin's friend's daughter, because she got into MIT. So she's impressive enough. Let's look at what she did and let's do that, because then maybe we can make the admissions officers think that we're impressive too, right? And that's not the intention. But what a lot of teens hear, either consciously or subconsciously, is, look, don't do what you're interested in. That's not impressive enough. Don't be curious about what you're curious about. That's not impressive enough. Instead, we need to look at what is impressive and just duplicate that, right? And what teens are hearing is, your interests and your values and what you care most about isn't enough to get you in. You're not good enough as you are. So let's pretend to be someone else for a few years. Maybe we can trick the admissions team. Maybe we can get in anyway, even though your curiosity, your values aren't good enough. You're not good enough, right? Now, we're not trying to say that. Of course, we're not trying to say that. But that's the message that way too many teens hear. And that's tragic, because it's so wrong. Those of you who are adults, and I assume that most of the audience is adults, although hopefully there are some teenagers here. Just by the way, if your teens can join these workshops, bring them along. This is so important for teens to hear as well. But this is important because those of you who are the parents here, who are the adults in the room, you have a wider time horizon to look at. And you know that the goal is not to get into some college. That's not the goal. The goal is to lead and to live a happy and successful and meaningful life, to become someone who has the skills and the ability to add value to the open market, right? If you can solve problems and add value to the open market, you're going to have a happy, successful, meaningful life. And that's ironic, because if you look at my LinkedIn feed, I have more connections to Ivy League friends than to everyone else combined. That's where I spent a lot of my years, and I just have a lot of connections there. I know a lot of people who graduated from Ivy League schools, and I know a lot of them are frustrated and do not feel happy or feel like life is meaningful. They don't feel successful. Some of them make a lot of money and don't feel successful. Some of them do not make a lot of money and don't feel successful. Okay? It runs the gamut. And I know plenty of Ivy League rejects, people who really wanted to go, but just didn't get in. But through resourcefulness, through a rededication to their own core values and developing into the kind of person that can solve problems in the real world, they became incredibly successful and happy and lead very meaningful lives. And so we know as parents that the goal is not to get into any one particular college. The goal is a happy, successful, and meaningful life. But teens don't have that life experience. They can't see that full time horizon. And so they're going to pick up on the energy that their parents give off. And so for many of them, this really is it. What college did you go to? That's what determines your value as a human being. But it doesn't have to, and it shouldn't. Okay. All right. So we say all of this, and then here's the kicker at the very end. The impressiveness trap is you work harder than anyone else to submit a boring application, and that boring application does not get you in. Okay. And that's because top schools are not looking for 2,000 clones of the same person. They're not looking for the most impressive student in 2,000 of the most impressive schools and rejecting everyone else. They want a rich, diverse class of students. They want an ecosystem full of lots of diversity, lots of differences, different ideas, different values, different languages, different ideologies, even religious backgrounds. They want all those differences to come together onto one campus because the world is a diverse place. And that diversity allows us to solve problems that we couldn't solve in a more, homogeneous location, space, right? We want that diversity on campus to reflect the diversity of the planet so that we can solve problems the same way, okay? And so colleges are looking for a rich, diverse class. They're not looking for 2,000 clones of the same person. And if your uncle's, cousin's, friend's daughter got into MIT with that kind of a personality and character traits and that kind of a resume, then they already have someone like that. They're not looking for another one. They're looking for someone different, okay? All right. And we know when teens or families fall into the impressiveness trap, right, then it can be very, very costly. Because even the most ambitious teens, at some point, especially when they become sleep deprived and they're not functioning at their highest level, they begin to feel overwhelmed. And as they feel overwhelmed and maybe confused, they start to procrastinate. That procrastination, especially if they don't want to disappoint their parents, especially if they feel extra weight on their shoulders because the family immigrated to the United States at great cost, and the parents and the extended family, everyone sacrificed to get you here and to give you this opportunity. They start to feel guilty if they feel overwhelmed, and that overwhelm leads to procrastination. And so they feel guilty, and yeah, let's get back up. Let's push harder. Refocus your motivation, get right back up, push harder and harder and harder, and push yourself to exhaustion. Now, this is not, the same order for everyone. But when you're exhausted, you're going to procrastinate. In sports, I would consider the greatest basketball coach of all time was John Wooden. We don't need to debate, why he was the best, but I'll tell you, he has this incredible quote that applies to college prep. He says, "Fatigue makes cowards of us all." And he was talking to the elite of the elite athletes in the world. He worked with the best athletes in the world, at least in the field of basketball and in the sport of basketball. And even the best athletes in the world, when they become fatigued, they become cowards, according to John Wooden. Our teenagers, even the best of the best of the best, you exhaust them. And I mean, cowards is the word that he used. I think it was to kind of stimulate that edge that those elite athletes had. But we get the point, right? It doesn't matter how ambitious you are if your body, your physical body and your mind cannot support your ambition. If your physical body doesn't have the stamina and your mind isn't sharp enough and clear enough, it doesn't matter how ambitious you are. And so you procrastinate and you feel worse. And at some point, these teens are going to get to the point where they disengage from schoolwork, they disengage from learning. And at that stage, the goal is not to learn new stuff. The goal is just to survive the day, right? Let me just survive my classes, survive my day, and then at some point, I'll escape. And that's my goal, is just survive the day until I can escape. And that escape for some people is video games or death scrolling social media. It could be Netflix or Disney Plus. But for others, it's high risk behaviors. It's drugs and alcohol. It's other activities that are also things we don't want our teens to be doing. And there's a very real mental health tax. Some teens feel anxious, some get depressed. And at some point, they start to talk to other teens. And especially if their entire peer group is other teens who fell into the impressiveness trap, who got stuck in the impressiveness trap, then they would just believe, well, everyone's doing this. This is what college prep means. And the way you win in college prep is you go through all this and you come out stronger and you just out survive everyone. You do more than everyone else for longer and you're tougher than everyone else. You're more motivated or whatever. And therefore, the strongest survive and the strongest get into these great schools. Well, those who are not good enough don't get in. And that's really disappointing when we know about the impressiveness trap. We know that even if you're successful and even if you're the most impressive student in your high school, it's going to probably require to become valedictorian and become, the most impressive student in your school. It might require that you sacrifice your core values and your sleep along the way, which is going to make you a boring applicant. You're going to submit an application that looks like 30,000 other most impressive in their school applicants, right? The applicants who are also the most impressive of their school, they're applying with very similar applications, okay? And so as the teens are struggling, they don't know about the impressiveness trap. They don't realize that there are 30,000 other high schools. So even if they're number one, they're going to be one of 30,000. And they're struggling probably to be top 10 in their school, which means they're one of 300,000, right? And they don't, they're constantly comparing themselves to other teens who seem to be handling all of this really well, right? All these teenagers that are handling the stress better than me, that are handling the difficult classes better than me. And they compare themselves and they feel like, man, I'm just not good enough, right? I'm not good enough because this other person's able to do it, but I'm not. And that's the conclusion that so many of our teens arrive at is, well, we're all trying to do the same thing and I'm not good enough. And so these other people clearly are good enough because they're able to handle it, but I'm not. And that's obviously the last thing that we want our teenagers to be thinking about. So I just got a reminder, and this is really important because we're just about to move into a really big idea here. So Grad Achiever does want to do a demo today. And so I'll stop sharing my screen so that you can spend a couple of minutes. We did this last time and I remember it was just a couple of minutes, but really, really valuable. And so Kavita, I think you might be the one doing that. I'll turn the time back over to you for a couple of minutes. So
I can do that, Steve. Sure. So I'll share my screen and hi everyone. This is a Grad Achiever demo. I would like to show it to you. So here we have the gradachiever.com website. Once you register and log in, this is how you are going to actually look into that. You will have a look into that. We have many different sections. One is example as events where anybody, if you have any event or anything which you would like to in fact create it, you can create it. There are some events which are already right now, it's going on, this Hacking College Admission 3-day workshop that is also listed. So this platform is for the community. So you yourself can also quite participate in that. There are a group section where you can create your own group or you can actually join the already existing groups. We have the member section where you can be in touch with the different members who are part of the Grad Achiever. Then we have the options for the opportunities. And here we keep posting about the internships, scholarships, summer programs, and volunteering. This is how you can see. In fact, if you would like to filter it for like high school, middle school, or undergrad, that you can do it. Any particular keyword you are trying to search it. And if you know about any opportunity, you also can post it, that opportunity, using this post opportunity link. Then we have few of the resources where we have the UC GPA calculator. This is basically specifically for the University of California GPA calculator and some of the FAQs which they use it. And then we have the podcast. So we keep doing the podcast and the recordings. We keep it here. And I believe this workshop recording also, you will find it later once this is done. And then high school course selections. Here you can actually go through it and see it if you have particular interest in any of the career, how your high school courses should look like. Obviously, you can modify it according to the high school's course availabilities. And then we have the tutor and counselor section, where you can actually, if you're looking for any tutors or any counselor, you can go and find out. For example, if you look into the counselor section, Steve is listed here. You can reach out to Steve by going here, and then if you have any question, you can talk to him. And then apart from that, we have the My Plan section, where uh, so in the course selection, it was basically if you know what you would like to become, how your courses should be. But if you really, then here, according to your plan, you can actually go and, okay, freshman, this is how I would like to plan it, my courses for the freshmen, sophomore, junior, and senior year. Apart from that, we have something called as career quiz. This quiz is basically if you really don't even know what field will really suit your personality and your traits, then you can take this quiz, and this will kind of give you an idea and will tell you what career basically suits your needs and your personalities. So this is the Grad Achiever. It is there. Please join it. And we also have the blog section, where there are so many blogs, it's already written. And then if you would like to in fact create your own blog, you can go to the blog section and you can create yourself too. So it is for the community, by the community, and it is for all of you. Please join and then make it a big.
Before
That's
you close that
Free
out,
platform, right?
yes,
I just want to emphasize that it is free. There are no charges
yes,
to
it is.
join or avail these benefits. So everyone, we
Yes,
encourage you to join and grow this community so that this particular information doesn't become siloed in the social media sites out there.
beautiful.
yes.
And
Thank you.
also, can you open up groups really quickly? Can you just click on group?
Yes, yes.
You'll see the most recent one, creative, is escaping the impressiveness trap. And I created this group, and that's what we're talking about today. So I still need to learn how to, how to create resources and improve and help people in the groups. But that's what that group is going to be about. And if you did want to join, and let me know, there are several things that I plan to do in the group to kind of add resources and help people. But I'm still trying to figure out, the best way to use all the tools here. There's so much to do. But that's one thing that I'm exploring with. And anyway, so that's a group that I've started to kind of
Cool.
continue the conversation that we're having today about the impressiveness trap.
Thank you. And then apart from that, we are also creating one of the Facebook group, where we will be kind of posting all the opportunities like summer programs, internship, scholarship, and volunteering on almost day-to-day basis. So if you're looking for something like that, you can also join that Facebook group. And I will post that link in the chat. That's pretty much from my end. Steve, thank you. Over to you.
All right, so I'll go ahead and jump back into where we were at. Here we go. So to remind you, we were saying, look, if this is your life, right? You push, 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 and at some point you just feel like, man, someone else is able to handle it. They can do it, but I'm just not good enough, right? I've given it my best, but I can't. It's too much. And the more sleep deprived a child is, by the way, the faster this is going to happen. What they can't see is that their uncle's cousin's friend's daughter that got into MIT did those activities because those activities were aligned with their core values. Those activities that they did that are all over their resume and make them look so impressive, those were activities that this student was curious about and woke up excited to do in the morning and went to bed feeling like, wow, we had a great day. We got to do more about, more important work to further this cause that I care so much about. In other words, that student was spending their time outside of the classroom, recharging their internal batteries. right? Doing activities that fed their soul. And when you try to copy those activities, but you have different core values, you're curious about different things, then you try to copy them and it drains your batteries. And your batteries are already drained from school, right? Because we have plenty of work that we need to do in school that we're not curious about. And so we slowly kind of drain those batteries within the parameters of this finite world of high school. And we don't recharge the batteries after school. Instead, we drain them further because we're trying to do what we think is more impressive to an admissions officer, right? We're getting further and further into the impressiveness trap. And that is just not going to work, right? If I see that someone else is able to keep motivated and stay focused and get so much work done, and I might even notice that when that person has recharged batteries every single day, that they're able to take full batteries into school, and they're probably doing better in school too. And we just feel like, wow, that person's good enough, but I'm not. But here's the thing. As parents, we should know better, right? Any teenager who tries to use willpower and self-discipline to keep up with another student who's internally driven through core values, I mean, that's not a fair fight. The student who's trying to copy is going to feel like they're not good enough every single time. Okay? It's not because they're not good enough. It's because they're trying to do things in order to be impressive to an admissions officer instead of doing the things that would actually make them memorable. And so the teenager begins to think, well, if I'm not good enough anyway, then at some point, they're going to stop. And that's when we talked about this. The goal becomes just to survive. Survive the day until you can escape into whatever your escape is, your escape world. Okay? Effective college prep is not about doing more than everyone else. It's not about becoming objectively the most impressive student in your high school. It's not about the impressiveness trap. The impressiveness trap will snare you, and it doesn't let go. You have to find a way out. And the irony is, once you're caught in that trap, you're going to be stuck doing things in order to be impressive that are going to keep you from becoming the kind of person that would get in. Okay? That valedictorian was so busy becoming the most impressive student in her high school, was so busy trying to impress the admissions officers for 4 years. She lost so much sleep and so much friend time and so much of her own curiosity along the way that she lost out on the possibilities of doing the things that would help her. And so I think I have, I want to share really quickly a story. This is a true story. The founding of Temple University was funded through the first president of Temple, who gave this speech over 3,000 times across the United States, asking for money to build this college. And the story that he told is a true story. It's about a farmer in Africa who heard about diamonds and that people were getting rich by mining for diamonds. And if he would just go out and get the right tools and go find a diamond mine, he could mine for diamonds as well and become very, very rich. And he loved this idea so much that he sold his farm to raise the money that he needed to buy the tools and to fund his exploration. So he sold his farm, raised the money, got the tools, and went off in search of diamond mines. And it was about 20 to 30 years later, 20, 25 years later, that he was penniless. And it is unknown if this person intentionally jumped into the river to die by suicide or whether he slipped into a river, but he died penniless after falling into a rapid river. And that's where he was found after he passed away. Meanwhile, the person who bought his farm, and began farming on the land, one time was crossing the stream, and this really beautiful blue sparkle just caught his eyes. And he looked down, and it was a really big blue sparkly rock, and he picked it up and put it on his mantle, and continued farming, right? And just weeks later, someone visited his home and almost fell off his chair. He said, "Wow, where did you get this rock that's on your mantelpiece?" And he said, it was out in my farm. And that's impossible. Do you have any idea what kind of rock this is? It turns out that particular rock at the time was the largest uncut diamond in the world. And he said, "You've got a diamond there. That's an uncut diamond." And he said, "This doesn't look like a diamond. I've seen diamonds before. This isn't anything like a diamond. And look how big it is. It's impossible." And he said, "And by the way, I have hundreds of these. They're all over. They're not as big and as beautiful as this. This is the best by far. But I've seen this same rock all over my farm." And it turns out that that farm that this person bought was indeed the most profitable diamond mine on the continent of Africa. And what had happened is the first farmer sold his farm to go look for diamonds. Number one, because he didn't realize what diamonds looked like in their uncut state, right? He didn't know how to see diamonds. He didn't spend the time to figure out, what a diamond looks like so that he could do that more effectively. He sold his farm in order to go learn. And actually, the things that matter most in your college prep and in your preparation to have a happy, successful, meaningful life are, number one, your physical body and your mental health. If it doesn't matter how ambitious you are, if you sacrifice your mental health and your physical body, it just doesn't matter. You can't maintain or sustain your ambition. And so your health comes first. Second of all, your curiosity. The things that you're curious about and want to explore, those are the things that if you explore them to a sufficient degree, will make you very, very interesting. And we'll learn about this tomorrow. Tomorrow is very important. We can learn exactly how admissions officers read applications and what stands out to them. Why impressiveness is so boring and curiosity and core values are so fascinating. So it's your mental and physical health. It's your curiosity. And number three, it's your core values. The things that really matter to you, the issues in society that violate your core values that you wish you could solve, the stuff that you believe you're going to solve in 20 years once you're qualified, those are the things, your core values, your curiosity, your health. Those are the diamonds that are within you now that empower you to become very, very interesting to an admissions officer. And what most people do when they pursue the impressiveness trap, they sell their own diamonds to go look for diamonds somewhere else. Of course, they're not going to find them. Okay? And so people who spend high school, just like this farmer who sold all of his diamonds to go look for diamonds, people who spend high school trying to be the most impressive person possible end up too busy, too overscheduled to possibly develop themselves into the kind of person that would get in. So they end up submitting a boring application because admissions officers are looking for this rich, diverse class of students with all kinds of differences in all kinds of ways that can support each other, an ecosystem with these differences. They want that class to get along with each other and support each other and help each other to become better. And so curiosity and character, kindness, these are things that they're looking for to make sure that they have a class of people that can work together on research teams to have breakthroughs, and work together to solve problems, work together after they graduate in alumni networks. Because they do care what happens after you graduate. They want you to go out and make the world a better place, bring honor back to the school. And so the last thing that they want is people who spent all their time trying to copy someone else and be as impressive as possible, which ends up making them boring. Tomorrow is really important because we're going to look at exactly how admissions officers are, what admissions officers are dealing with as they go through each admissions cycle. And as you learn how the admissions officers read these applications, you can see far more clearly how you would be able to contribute to the class and later become the kind of alumna or alumnus that they're looking for. And so tomorrow is really important. We're going to start at the exact same time, so in 23 hours from now. Between now and then, I want you to, those teenagers who are here and parents who can have their teens watch the recording or can share with them. I need you teens to make an exhaustive list of every activity that you're involved in or plan to be involved in. And that's the rest of this school year into the summer. Okay, think about your summer activities as well. Bring that list with you tomorrow to our workshop, because we're going to use that tomorrow. And it will be very, very helpful as we understand how admissions officers think about the college applications. All right. And so I just got questions for links to the recording. I won't have the recording until Zoom has processed it in about 35 or 40 minutes. Kavita, or I assume we will be putting the recording on
the
GradeAchiever platform, and so we can look there. And also the link for both sessions is the same. So use the same Zoom link to get in 23 hours and in 47 hours, because day 3 is really, really important also. But tomorrow, it sets the foundation so you understand how admissions officers see their activities. All right. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us in day 1. This sets up the foundation. We must understand that it is not a good idea to get your foot caught in the impressiveness trap. That's going to cause so many problems. It's going to be a really bad strategy if you want to get into the more selective schools. Tomorrow, we're going to understand what it's like to be an admissions officer, and that's going to help us move forward into day 3, where we learn the step-by-step process to take advantage of this understanding. Okay, so thank you for joining us today, and get ready for a really, really important day tomorrow. Bring your activity list and bring your teenager tomorrow. We'll see you in 23 hours. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you, Steve. Appreciate your time. Thanks, everybody.